What is up guys, Cine Critique here, and today I'm going to be reviewing the new series on HBO that just premiered. It's called Run. It's a half-hour comedy series that follows a woman whose boring life is thrown upside down when she receives a text from her college sweetheart inviting her to drop everything and meet him in New York to fulfill a pact they made 17 years prior. The show doesn't really take too much time to get things started. Right away, we're introduced to the main character Ruby, who's played by Merritt Wever. Merritt Wever, she doesn't look like the stereotypical actress. If anything, she looks like the stereotypical aspiring actress, always auditioning yet never getting the part. But you know, she's been on a pretty good tear recently. She had a memorable role as Scarlett Johansson's sister in Marriage Story, and she was the main lead in yet another Netflix miniseries called Unbelievable. If you haven't seen that show and you like crime-based shows, I highly recommend it. I give it a solid score, like an 8.7, so needless to say, I am a big fan of Merritt Wever, and I was really looking forward to the premiere of Run. So the show starts off with Ruby sitting in her car. She's having a bland ass conversation with her husband. You can tell she's living a lame life, but then she gets this one word text from an ex-boyfriend that simply says run in all caps. After she thinks about it for like 5 seconds, she's off to the races. Ruby drives straight to the airport, no luggage, no change of clothes, no carry-on bag, nothing. She catches a flight to New York City and meets up with her ex-boyfriend Billy in Grand Central Station, the first time they've seen each other since high school. The backstory is pretty simple and relatable. Back in high school, Ruby and Billy made a pact that if one of them texted run and the other person replied within a couple hours, then they would immediately meet up in New York and spend a week traveling the world together. After the fun is over, they'll decide whether they want to continue to be together or go back to their old lives. Although, after you leave your husband hanging and run straight to the airport so you can vacation with your ex for a week, I'd argue if going back to their old lives is a viable option for Ruby. This is the kind of premise we've seen before, especially if you've seen How I Met Your Mother, the pact that Ted and Robin make together that if they're both single when they're 40, they just marry each other. It's a pact that I can't say I made myself during my younger years, which is why this premise is so relatable, but it's one of those things where people say it in the heat of the moment, then 20 years goes by and both parties forget about it. But Ruby and Billy, they actually go through with it, mainly because life hasn't turned out quite the way Ruby and Billy hoped it would. This show has a mixture of quite a few different genres. It's mostly a dark comedy that plays on the stereotypical things we usually see in rom-coms, but as the season plays out, it turns out to be much more of a thriller as Ruby has to deal with the consequences of leaving her husband and 2 kids behind. The chemistry between the 2 main actors is also one of the main things I enjoy most about the show's first 5 episodes. Ruby and Billy have this weird, awkward flirtation, mostly because they spend most of the first couple episodes stuck together on an Amtrak train, and now that I think about it, a good amount of this series takes place on an Amtrak, which I found to be the strongest parts of the show, mostly because of the awesome directing of Kate Dennis. We follow these characters as they rush down train aisles, cram into tiny spaces, and seek privacy in a cramped bathroom. These scenes also bring in the occasional funny side character, and these scenes from the Amtrak are easily my favorites. If they eventually decide to do a whole season of just Ruby and Billy hanging out on an Amtrak, I'd totally be down for that. But the main issue I have with this show is that after a few episodes, this show becomes less of a character-driven spoof and becomes more of a cliche run-of-the-mill thriller with a totally unnecessary twist that I'm not gonna spoil here, but it's a twist that's gonna force Run to change tones drastically going forward, and I don't think it needed that, especially so soon. This show constantly tries to up the stakes when it doesn't have to. A mother leaving behind her husband and kids on a whim and the consequences to those actions is all the stakes we need, but the show just feels compelled to pile more and more on top, and I think that's a disservice. It's ironic because the fast-paced energy and urgency that pulled me in at the beginning of the show is also what causes it to slightly unravel later on in the season, but all in all, I was a fan of the show's first 5 episodes, which is all HBO would let me get my hands on. I just wish they slow things down a bit, make it more of a character-driven show and less reliant on twists that take the show down an unnecessary dark path. I'm gonna give the show a solid but not spectacular 7.4. It's not one of HBO's best shows I've seen over the last couple years, but it's definitely an entertaining one. But alright guys, that's my review of Run. Go ahead and let me know what you think about Run in the comments below. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you like this review? Hate this review? Whatever your thoughts are, just comment below so we can keep this conversation going. And if talking movies is your thing, especially now that we're stuck at home with our dick in our hands due to COVID-19, please subscribe to my channel to help your boy out. And remember, stories may fade, but real legends never die.